Hi, I'm Shannon Stewart, GFEMS's Senior Data Scientist, and today I'm going to talk to you about responsible data management and data security. First, let me underline the importance of data to our mission success. We're committed to building the evidence base for programming that works. Your mission success and ours depends on data, and we can reduce risks collectively. We give special attention to data collection, analysis, storage, sharing, and dissemination as part of our obligation to be good stewards of the data of potentially vulnerable people, and we respect the data rights of beneficiaries and research participants. We have developed some relevant guidelines to continually improve our practices and to help you improve yours. You are joining a community of practice that can help each other as we set a new collective standard for data use, management, and security. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about data security basics. Data security is primarily a management issue. It requires buy-in from leaders and organization members. Technical solutions are just secondary because people throughout the organization must understand the need for them and commit to their use in order for them to be effective. It can be difficult for organizations to understand relevant threats, and when they come into view, they can be overwhelming and paralyzing. Some people may overestimate their competency in data security, have outdated or mistaken conceptions about how to approach it, and may be resistant to change. We all have to keep a learning attitude to approach this complex and evolving task. All organizations must find the right balance between organizational mission and the friction of security adaptations. Because the risk is always evolving, having robust processes is much more important than adhering rigidly to checklists. Our security is linked and interdependent, so we should all help each other improve. Let's talk about some of the basic principles of data security. The most common data security threats are accidents and the physical theft of devices. Data is generally considered secure if it's encrypted in transit and in storage. You can know if it's encrypted because it either requires a password or you must have a file on your computer called a certificate or sometimes a key to access it. So, for instance, if my laptop requires a password to open it, the drive itself is encrypted. A side note here, email is generally not encrypted by default. And even if you're using encrypted email, you must encrypt attachments separately. Encrypted means that something is transformed so that the input can never be matched to the output. Encrypted messages are not the same length, and single characters are not equivalent to other characters. So here I've shown an example of what it looks like if you encrypt the string that makes up my name, Shannon Stewart. So when it's encrypted, it becomes this long string of essentially gibberish. But then the phrase "nobody expects the Spanish repetition" using the same encryption algorithm becomes this similarly long string of gibberish, even though it has many more characters. So the way this is encrypted is completely irreversible, and you can't guess anything about the input based on this string of random information. Data is always best protected if it's transmitted in encrypted form, and the key to unlock it is distributed through a different communication channel. So, for instance, if you transfer an encrypted file, call the recipient on the phone and tell them the password. Long passwords are stronger than short, even complex passwords. So, for instance, Sky Beef Pilot Regard is harder to decrypt than 09TL Octothorpe W. Our security objectives cover 3 areas. The first is confidentiality. The second is integrity. And the last is availability. All three of these principles must be considered when we're thinking about creating a data security plan. There's a 3-step planning process for data security that I want you to consider as your organization starts to make plans for data security. The first is to inventory the data. The second is to assess the potential impacts of a loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability of that data. And the third is to create a mitigation plan on that basis. So let's think about what it means to inventory the data. You might ask yourself, what is the origin, the headings, and the number of records in this data set? Does it contain personally identifiable information or data that's responsive to GDPR or some other local privacy law, like email addresses, health status, or union membership? If someone has a small information about a data subject in this data set, can they easily re-identify them? Does it contain trade secrets, financial information, or operational data that's critical to your mission? What does the metadata reveal about the contents? Is it whistleblower information? When will it be out of date or retired? If you are accountable to GDPR, what is the legitimate purpose of holding or processing the data? Second, we would consider the impact levels. The first is low. The potential impact is low if, for instance, it might cause a loss of confidentiality, availability, or integrity might cause a loss of degradation and mission capability, but it's still, your organization is still able to perform its primary functions. There may be minor damage to organizational assets, minor financial loss, or minor harm to individuals. An impact is moderate if there's a significant degradation in mission capability, significant damage to organizational assets, significant financial loss, or significant harm to individuals that does not involve loss of life or serious life-threatening injuries. The potential impact is high if a loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability causes a severe degradation or loss of mission capability, major damage to organizational assets, major financial loss, or severe or catastrophic harm to individuals involving loss of life or serious life-threatening injuries. So third, with these 2 steps already in mind about your most critical data, you would then create a mitigation plan. Your organization may want to create a baseline mitigation plan that applies to all organizational data, and then specific mitigation plans for moderate and high impact data. So for instance, a typical mitigation plan has information under each of these headings. Under personnel management, for instance, you might put that your personnel is subject to a background check and that you reserve the right to terminate their employment for reasons related to data security. Asset management simply means that you keep and maintain an accurate and up-to-date inventory of your organizational devices. Physical security means that an office is kept locked all the time, and you monitor who comes in and out, and your devices, when not in use, are kept in locked cabinets, and so on. I'll distribute a template for this that has more information about each of these headings, and gives some thought to what you should be planning for. Of course, GFEMS understands that not every organization might have a plan in place for each one of these at the moment, but I think it's a good idea to recognize where you might need to create a new plan and start thinking about what you can do in the meantime. I think one thing that people are always looking for in this type of information are the 5 top priority data security measures you should be taking. And so I've listed them here. I want you all to encrypt, that is, password protect your computers and phones. That way, if you lose a laptop or your phone is stolen from you, we can be relatively sure that none of the organizational data is accessed. Adopt a password manager that creates and stores long, strong passwords on your behalf. The most common hacking technique is to steal passwords that were badly protected on one service and try them on your other accounts in case you were reusing them. Wherever possible, you should set up two-factor, sometimes called two-step authentication. That way, if you're the victim of a phishing email, the phishers will still not be able to get into your accounts because the second factor will go to your authentic device. Enable automatic software updates on all devices and use authentic software. Low-cost or no-cost software licenses can be available for nonprofits through organizations like, for instance, TechSoup. And then lastly, turn on the ability to remote wipe your device if lost or stolen. So just to review some of the really common threats and the mitigations you could be taking. The most common is that a device is lost or stolen, and the best way to guard against this threat is to encrypt your laptop and phone. The second is that a password that you used across many sites is compromised because one site was hacked. So the best way to guard against this is to use a password manager. And then when we think about availability of data, the most common threat is that your device is physically damaged, and so you should be backing up your devices regularly or storing data on the cloud. And here I included a little cartoon about how people think hacking actually works. That someone might access a book that you're keeping of all of your passwords. But in fact, the most common way that people's accounts get compromised is that a sort of amateurish website leaks email addresses and passwords that they were storing, and somebody tries them all on a more sensitive site like Venmo. The next part of this presentation concerns responsible data management. This particularly concerns the data that you're collecting on beneficiaries and is very likely part of your monitoring, evaluation, and learning plan. The responsible data management lifecycle has considerations that you should undertake before collecting data, while collecting data, managing, using, and storing data, sharing and transferring, closing the feedback loop, disposing of data, and what to do in case of a breach. So before you collect data, you should review local legislation on data privacy and protection. GFEMS is performing a review now and will provide you with some documents that should help. Consider your vulnerable populations' right to be heard and included, and balance that with their right to privacy and security. You should define the specific purpose of the research and plan for data minimization. Consider data sensitivity and carry out risk assessment to ensure no harm is caused. Develop research design protocols and supporting documents. Obtain guidance and approval from the fund's monitoring, evaluation, and learning team. And submit experimental plans to ethical review for approval if necessary. While you're collecting data, you should obtain informed and voluntary consent for data collection. You should be transparent with data subjects about the purpose of the data collection. Collect that data for the specified purpose only, or obtain consent for further use. Limit the collection of personal data. Train collectors on processes for data collection, capture, and storage. Train collectors on trauma-informed approach. Establish and use standard procedures for call center operators, information managers, case management systems, or other systems you're using to collect and store data. and share your contact information with data subjects and research participants. In the phase where you're managing, using, and storing data, you should use the data consistently with the stated purpose for collection. Anonymize or de-identify personal information if feasible. If you're having a technical challenge with this, contact me and I can help. Maintain high quality of data that is accurate, up-to-date, and unbiased. Train and equip data handlers with information management and protection skills. To the best of your ability, ensure privacy and confidentiality of any personal data. And ensure reasonable physical and technical security safeguards to store the data. When sharing and transferring data, share it in accordance with the specified purpose and consent you already received. Use data sharing agreements if they are relevant. Identify secure pathways and risk of exposure. Ensure the core data protection principles and safeguards consistent with your mitigation plan, and comply with relevant local privacy laws. You should provide participants your contact information and other options like a helpline to reach you for concerns or feedback. Respond to their concerns, questions, and feedback within a reasonable time. You should clearly state the benefits or remuneration that participants can expect. Do not make promises that you cannot meet or set false expectations. You should review and consider how long you should retain personal data. Regularly delete sensitive data where retention is not legally required. Comply with requests to withdraw from research or to have data deleted. Acquire the necessary expertise to effectively destroy data with help from your community of practice if needed. And again, I've included a little joke here, but it's not unreasonable. Somebody has removed the hard drive from a computer and shot it twice with a longbow to destroy the data on it. Okay, if you become aware of a data breach, report it to GFEMS without delay. Notify affected research subjects and any relevant partners, such as your subcontractors. Provide the necessary information to investigate a data breach. Assess the risks associated with the breach and determine its severity. Involve essential personnel and departments to resolve the breach. We're going to do some tabletop exercises later that will help you plan for this. Take the necessary measures to ensure the safety and protection of individuals affected by the breach. And consider systems and methods that can mitigate the severity of a breach. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to talking to you in person.